my first job out of school I was a lab rat, and I was like, this is not for me. I thought I was going to be in Boston until, forever. And then all my friends moved. They moved to other cities in the US. And I was like, all right, I'm going to one up all you guys. So, like I said, the Microsoft Excel and the way of working today, like, yeah, sure, it works, but, it's not an enabling tool, right? Like, what we're creating is an enabling tool that helps the food scientists, especially solve kind of like that cold start problem. Don't be afraid to experiment, take some risks. The days of, being like, okay, right, like you are a chemical engineer or you are a food scientist or you are, right, like the days of being defined by our degree, like that's over.
Let's start with the basics. Why don't you tell us about your food job? Tell me what you do and what problem is your company solving?
Yeah, so I'm, as of about a year or so ago, co-founder and head of business development for Agilitas. And so Agilitas, we kind of the fancy techie way of describing it is we're an agentic AI platform for food and beverage formulation. I would say the simpler way of putting that is we're a software platform that helps food scientists work more quickly and effectively. And so in terms of the problem that we're solving, at a kind of at a higher level, right? Like we're really helping food and beverage companies get their products to market more quickly. So the problem that I was really obsessed with and kind of coming up with the venture was you hear that like 80 to 90% of new products fail in the market. I just found that completely mind-boggling. And so we interviewed, hundreds of stakeholders in the industry. And of course, there are many reasons that contribute to that statistic, but a really big one is speed. And so we saw a really big opportunity in helping kind of streamline and accelerate formulation and helping companies get products to market more quickly. And then kind of really looking at it from the ground level in terms of like how we're helping food scientists and where we're really focused today is helping food scientists get to benchtop more quickly and effectively. So really kind of from the start of the R&D process to, okay, now we got our first base formula that we're going to create some samples of at the kind of the benchtop, kitchen level. So that's where we're really focused on today.
Well, we're definitely going to be diving a lot into that later in the show because I know so many questions that people would want to know, like how did you get there? What did you do? But, we're a food job podcast. We're going to talk about that first. So let's go back to you. We'll focus on that. And let's talk about your typical week. Like as someone doing your role, like what are you actually doing?
No 2 weeks are the same. No 2 days are the same. But relatively speaking, I mean, there's two main constants for me is one, definitely talking to customers, prospective and current customers. So, food scientists, people within food R&D, and just collectively, getting more and more feedback on the platform, getting more people on the platform. So that's always a constant. And then two is investors. That's part of being a startup co-founder. So that's part of the game. So that's definitely another thing as well. And then as of late, definitely more time towards getting the word out about what Agilitas is doing. This being an example of that. I mean, so we launched the first version of the platform in December of last year via Food Navigator. So now spending more time working on conference presentations and things like that. So we'll be speaking at the Research Chefs Association conference in a couple weeks, for example. So definitely more time on putting presentations and whatnot together to really get the word out about what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I found you. I think there was like a recent NPR. It was either a podcast or it was a blog. I don't know. I read both, whatever it is. And it's just like getting that word out there. I can imagine, like, do you kind of seek out these different? So like Food Navigator, if I'm not mistaken, is, what do you call it? Like not a journal. The word's eluding me, but it's trade publication, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Is that like, do you reach out to them or do they reach out to you?
It's a bit of both.
Okay.
for that instance in the launch, yeah, like we reached out to them. And we knew that a lot of our, kind of the food R&D community, like they really look to Food Navigator and similar sources
Okay.
to get information. So yeah, it's a bit of both kind of inbound and outbound.
So when it comes to like making these presentations, is it like was this something that you were? I'm like, do I go back to start talking about you already being in school, or do I start talking about how presentations? But you know what? I think I am going to walk it back because I mentioned earlier that you did chemical engineering, and
Yeah,
then what you're doing to me feels like something like a food scientist would at least go into, not someone who was in chemical engineering.
yeah,
So I definitely want to like walk through this journey going from
yeah.
undergrad. And so it's your story. I'll let you take it away. Walk us through since undergrad to like key steps to how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing, I mean, kind of at a philosophical level, is funny. I really look back to, so yeah, I did chemical engineering at Northeastern here in Boston, where I am. And I feel like not too many people pay attention to their undergraduate commencement ceremony speaker, but for whatever reason, I did. And one thing that they said that really stuck with me was like embrace the zigs and the zags. And so I really took that to heart. And so I feel like every kind of step, in the last 10 years or so in my professional journey, I've really tried to find like kind of one common thread between going from where I was at, one point to the next, but then making sure that there was always going to be new things I was going to be learning and doing. But anyways, I mean, yeah, a lot of, my first job out of school I was a lab rat, and I was like, I learned pretty quickly, this is not for me. So I was like, okay, I need to make a pivot. So then I went into consulting, and working across a number of industries, but all related to emerging technology, technology strategy, technology scouting, technology due diligence, things like that. And we just happened to get a lot of clients in the food industry, and I was just blown away with the questions that were coming our way related to food technology. I think we take for granted kind of, yeah, the at least here in the US, generally speaking, how accessible food is and the food that's on the shelf, but it's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and then there's so much that's being done in terms of, how do we create the food of the future. So anyways, I just became endlessly fascinated with the questions that we were getting around food technology, and so decided to really go all in on that, and so became an analyst dedicated specifically to the food tech vertical, and then did that for 4 years, and then it was like, okay, now I kind of want to sit on the other side of the table. I want to be the client. I want to be the one that gets to do the technology scouting, the fun desk research piece, but then actually like form programs and projects with startups. So that's what led me to leading open innovation for a food company, and then did that for a couple of years, and then it was like, okay, well, now I want to be the startup. So that's what led to Agilitas. So yeah, I kind of wanted to, take the entrepreneurial plunge and really kind of, truly understand what it means to be a startup founder and kind of build a business from the ground up.
So you mentioned consulting, and then people were asking you questions. Do you mind going a little bit more in depth into what that means? Because
Yeah.
I know consulting can mean like helping make a formulation, it can be helping marketing, but like I'm just curious about the questions because it seemed to
Yeah.
really have sparked your interest in this field.
Yeah. So this was, when I was doing this was like 2016 to, or I guess starting 2015, when I was like in a pure, like a consulting role across a number of industries. And then I was an analyst from like 2017 to 2021, dedicated specifically to food tech. And so this was kind of like the peak, like VC period, where like there was a huge, infusion of capital into a lot of food tech startups, especially like the Beyond Meat and Impossibles of the world. So at that time, I mean, we were getting just inundated with questions around like, yeah, cell-based meat and plant-based and a lot of questions around alternative proteins, but then also around like personalized nutrition and just personalization in general of products. Getting questions around like food traceability and transparency and things like that. Um, and so yeah, it was the type of consulting. It was an advisory business, so it was all desk research. But yeah, really helping advise kind of primarily senior level people within the Fortune 500 companies, a lot of the big food and beverage companies and agrochemical companies, about okay, what should their R&D and technology portfolio look like for the next 5 years, that type of thing. So that's kind of where it was very future focused.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So with those experiences, because you said you kind of want to you want to have a seat on the other side of the table now that you're starting with Agilitas, but like, I guess what perspectives or like what kind of learnings did you get out of being on the other side? Like, do you think that it gave you a leg up to where you are today? And like, what points do you think are helping?
There's a couple ways I can answer that. One, in terms of like why did I specifically like pick this area that Agilitas is focused on, like AI for food formulation. Because in everything that I did before, I had the fortune of right, kind of like sitting on a perch and like looking at all these different areas of emerging technology in food and agriculture. And I saw this intersection of AI and food formulation, food product development as a white space. I saw a lot of opportunity um, that was relatively untapped, and I was like, okay, for that, I really want to go in, and I think there's an opportunity to create something new. And then two, I was also just like very personally interested and passionate. I just was like, okay, this is also just really cool, and just kind of the nerd factor in me was also pulling me towards this area. But then two, right, like also having like evaluated a lot of startups and kind of judging their potential, success or failure. There's a couple critical factors that I always looked at. One is the team. So much of it is really the team. You can put everything else aside. So much is dependent on the team, and I'm glad to be surrounded by great co-founders and kind of first people within the company, that we have such a good blend of software experience, food tech experience, um, AI experience, like all of that. So it's just a really good fusion of different skill sets and know-how. And then the other really big metric, which is, look, it's subjective, same as evaluating the team, but nonetheless, it's just like, yeah, what's the value of the solution or technology that you're creating? This is something that, when I was an analyst, we looked at, and right, basically how much does this solution kind of move the needle in solving a real world customer pain? And so, we definitely pride ourselves on being very customer centric. Like, we built the entire platform hand in hand with food scientists, research chefs, product developers, before we even wrote a single line of code. We are making this very purpose built for the kind of the customer audience that we're looking to serve.
I love that it's very customer focused because that's where they're going to be the ones using it. And food is it's so specialized to each company. It's not like a car has a general, there's four wheels and it moves and all that, but like food goes from everything to sauces to cakes to baked goods. Like, I can imagine you'd have to be customer first in order to start it off that way.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, look, there's some things where it's common throughout, independent of category or company size, but then also there is definitely a lot of nuances in terms of by category, by company size, by geography. And so, over time, we're looking to incorporate and kind of reflect those nuances into the platform, as best as possible. But yeah, so we take a very, very customer centric approach. I mean, it's customers are the lifeblood of the business. So we really take that to heart.
And then coming back again, I keep going to this chemical engineering because I just
Yeah.
think it's such a fascinating thing to go from where, like, I know you just spoke about it, but going from where you are today to back, being in it. Do you find that there's been any skills or classes that you've taken from your undergraduate in the chemical engineering and like applied it? Or like, how has that portion shaped to where you are
I
now?
think it's more so like the mindset. It's not so much hard skills. It's more
Okay.
so for example, chemical engineering, a lot of it is focused on, right, how do we increase yield? How do we increase efficiency, right? Like in the traditional chemical manufacturing environment, right? You have inputs, your reactants, and then you have your outputs, right? And you're trying to figure out, how do I get as much output for the least amount of input? And so I think that's kind of stayed, that ethos has stayed with me. And so, like, right, for Agilitas, we're obsessed with how do we increase the productivity of food scientists. And so, we've been able to demonstrate productivity increases by up to 100x, for example. So I think that ethos, and then also around just like in some of my previous, like chemical engineering focused roles, like I really loved the whole concept of like Kaizen and continuous improvement. That's traditionally used for manufacturing, but then also, right, you can kind of stretch that to other areas. So I think that's another thing too, as well, that, yeah, just how can we make processes and better. And so that's another thing that I think carries through to today with Agilitas and myself and what we're doing.
I like that. Yeah, because I know that a lot, as much as people university and college, like it more so like gets this mindset set for you, like how do you think? And I like to think
Yeah.
that's it because I mean, fact of the matter is like even for me, a lot of like the first year courses, I don't remember. Like I might
Mhm.
remember the labs or the skills, but like you asked me about quantum physics. I took 4 months in calculus. Well, okay, I take it back. I do use calculus, but quantum physics, like I did it for 4 months. I could not tell you most of what I learned. I could
Yeah.
probably not walk it through, but like that thinking that it taught you, okay, well you have this final answer and like how do you go? So I guess it does apply for the different types of undergraduate degrees.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so like I was saying before, like every step, that I've taken, and I'm sure others have gone along similar path, is just like I always try to find like one common thread as I go from one step to the next, but then always, making sure that there's something new to do. And so yeah, now I've taken, 5, 6 steps or however many since 10 years. So now a little bit further away from what I was focusing on in undergrad, but yeah, there's still, through lines, regardless.
Well, one line I did want to talk about because when I was doing my research on you, it had mentioned that you had gone to Singapore and you've
Yeah.
gone to Saudi Arabia, and they are very different cultures than, the US and Canada. And I wanted to just talk about that experiences. Like, how did you even end up there? Like, it seems
Yeah.
kind of random. And then just like what you brought back with it, because I think that like Singapore, I've heard about their food industry and it's just like so
Yeah.
different, but it's cool. And like, how did you get into those places and like what did you
Yeah.
bring back from them?
I mean, the very honest answer is, so this is around like 2018. A lot of my friends, I thought I was going to be in Boston until, forever. And then all my friends moved. They
Oh
moved to other
gosh.
cities in the US. And I was like, all right, I'm going to one up all you guys. So that's kind of what led me to like, all right, maybe I should look somewhere else.
Good enough reason.
Yeah. And then, anyways, I was, so the consulting firm I was at, they had an office in Singapore, and a lot of our business was coming from Asia Pacific, and we didn't have anyone on my team there. So I was like, look, like, wouldn't it be great to, but kind of better serve the clientele there, and have boots on the ground, and was lucky that the business saw that opportunity as well, and so yeah, I relocated with that firm there. And then yeah, I mean, I learned so much in terms of, yeah, one, just what was going on in kind of the food tech ecosystem in Singapore and Asia generally. So I got very lucky with the timing. I moved there beginning of 2019, right after Singapore launched its 30 by 30 vision, which was, at that time, they produced only about 10% of the local food supply domestically. And so they were looking to increase that up to 30% by 2030. So by that time, it was, about 10 years from then. And that just kind of opened the floodgates in terms of investment and activity, kind of startup activity, in terms of food tech. So, like, there was a lot going on when I was there in terms of new startups, new incubators, new investors, all of that. So that was super exciting. And then, yeah, I learned a lot in terms of kind of the culture, both, personally, but then like the professionally, the business culture. So in some instances, it's you kind of have to understand what's not being said verbally, and really trying to kind of really assess what someone's kind of judging you on. And then I did that for a couple years. Honestly, probably would have stayed longer, but then COVID lockdown um was there for a year and a half. No, not leaving at all, and it's an amazing country, but a quarter the size of Rhode Island, so got cabin fever a little bit. And then, at that point too, wanted to go towards, what kind of like a client role, and as I was describing earlier, and so that led me to Saudi Arabia and Neom, and the Neom project, and leading open innovation for the food sector of Neom. And I mean, that was an incredibly unique experience. Neom, at least at the time I was there, was a bit of like a startup on steroids. A lot of funding from the country, but still, like, I mean, yeah, just an incredible amount of construction and development work, and just a lot of everything's new. Everything that was, had to be created from scratch. Um, so anyways, and then, learned a lot about the business culture there. Face to face interaction was critical to really forming relationships and getting things done. Um, and and then ended up, coming back to the US about a year or so, kind of hit the ground running with Agilitas. So it's been a fun run.
Wow. With Singapore and Saudi Arabia, would you say that they're very, like, is it very different from like the US? Is it like, do you find the business culture is very different? Or I'm curious because I don't
Yeah.
really know much about it.
It's interesting when you put it that way. There's nuances, right?
Okay.
Like, there's nuances. Um, Especially with Saudi. I mean, once again, I'll hammer on the point, like, face-to-face interaction was so critical. Even just for, like, maybe things I needed to get approved or whatever, like, it helped so much when you walked down the campus that we were on, and, shook hands, or, took the person out the coffee that needed to approve whatever you needed to get approved. Like, just anyway, just even little things like that. It just really made a difference. And then, there's different forms of communication. You know, uh, I dealt with a lot of Dutch people,
Oh.
and both Saudi when I was in Saudi and Singapore. Dutch people are very direct. Like, they'll tell you it's fine. Whereas, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, you know, typically, this is my experience. Japanese people are very indirect. So that's what I was saying. It's a lot more of kind of what's
Oh.
not said rather than what's, verbally said. So there you have to do a little bit more kind of reading in between the lines. So I dealt with quite a few, Japanese companies when I was in Singapore. So there's just those nuances that you gotta pick up and kind of understand, and just kind of tailor your communication a bit when you're working with people from different cultures.
Mm. Wow. Coming back now to the US, I can imagine, like, it's US has its own culture, but then after, like, different people that you work with are from all over walks of life. So it's like one presentation for one group is not going to work for another type, where it's like that individual person, like, how do you figure out what is going to resonate the most with this person that I'm speaking with? Like, kind of sounds like mental gymnastics. Like, I feel that's the term
Yeah,
coming to my mind.
yeah, and then it also depends on, like, what type of interaction you're having. Is it a face-to-face interaction, or is it a one-to-one virtual interaction like this, or is it a conference, or is it a closed door session with a group, and look, there's only so much you can do to kind of accommodate and adjust, but and it's these are not things that you can really like read out of a textbook. You just kind of got to learn. And look, I made mistakes in how I communicated sometimes in these different settings. You just got to learn and adjust and do the best you can.
Well, I'm going to shift gears because I really like that, but I'm going to shift gears more to talking about Agilitas because I think that a lot of people would find it just honestly like really cool what you're doing because, with chatbots being present for the past 2 years, like it feels like AI went from like, computers for talk. Obviously, we use them in software and that, but then all of a sudden it's just like that is the talk of the town with everything. But
Yeah.
you're more so hearing it from like the writing, like I don't know, it's everywhere. But when it comes to the food industry, like I'm not hearing as much about it from that perspective. So clearly, you're filling a gap. So let's dive deeper into Agilitas. Like, why don't you give us a again? I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but can you give us a rundown about some of the features that are part of it and like walk us through like I come to you, I've purchased the software, I'm ready. What can I expect from it?
Yeah, and taking a quick step back before I get into that. I mean, just jumping off a bit of what you said, like, yeah, the world's changed in the last 2 years. Like AI is everywhere, kind of in your face, right? Like,
Definitely.
there's commercials, there's billboards, there's you name it, and this is all in thanks to kind of, yeah, the advent of large language models like ChatGPT and whatnot. And so yeah, it's democratized AI. I think that so we hit a tipping point. A year and a half, 2 years ago now, which is just created so many opportunities. But yeah, then going to specifically in terms of like, yeah, what we've built out so far, and there's definitely a lot more in our roadmap. But I would say there's really two reasons why customers love our platform and are attracted to it. One is product benchmarking. So really, when you're thinking about the start of an R&D project, understanding, okay, I'm creating a new product, or for this certain category. So high protein, low sugar, vegan, snack bars. I don't know, I'm making something up, right? So understanding, okay, well, what are the current products that are out there in the market? Especially like, what are the leading products in the market? And then really looking at that from an R&D lens as opposed to a marketing or commercial lens. So looking at those products and understanding, okay, well, what ingredients are they using? Why are they using those ingredients? Um, what claims are they making, especially nutritionally driven claims? And then yeah, what's the nutritional profile for these products? Perhaps a bit of a technical analysis on, well, then maybe how they've manufactured these products, to really help, right? Because all of that information really will help inform your formulation decisions, which is really the next step. Um, so we're able to create these like AI generated reports that gives all of this information just to really help jumpstart that R&D process. And so people have really been enjoying those. And then the second piece is the platform's ability to create a starting formula, like just like that. And really, the prominent way of doing that is by reverse engineering, any existing product in the market. So, um, you can just upload a screenshot of a nutrition facts panel and ingredient statement to our platform, and then using our AI, it'll very quickly generate an approximation of that formula. And then you can go and iterate and make adjustments to it, and to make kind of your version of that. But once we really started to drill down, okay, well, how do you get to a starting formula? Okay, well, we look at a product on the shelf and we do some back of the envelope math to come up with an approximation of the formula for that product, and da 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 da. Okay, great. Like, we can just do that very, very quickly. So a lot of people, yeah, have been really enjoying that feature.
Just for those who might not be familiar, like what is the alternative so if like we didn't have access to Agilitas, like what are people actually doing if they
Yeah,
don't have that?
yeah, and this is kind of where, like, at least for me, although I've been in the food tech world for the better, for a decade or so, like I haven't necessarily lived the life of a food scientist and created a product with my own two hands. So once like me and the team really started to drill down on that, like at least we were pretty mind boggled in terms of how it's done today. And in just that, like we were like, okay, like there has to be a better way, and that's what we're trying to do. So with that, like it's people open up an Excel spreadsheet. They create like three or four columns: ingredient, supplier, quantity, and then a calculation for the relative weight. And then people are, making as best of a guess as they can with their know-how. Or, people will right, they'll look at the nutritional panel of a product, right? The nutritional property of the product, the nutritional property of the ingredients, and then the ingredients in descending order by weight, because that's how they have to be listed on the ingredient statement. And then they're making some calculations to try to fit that, um, to kind of approximate the formula. But that's a lot of manual calculations, trial and error, da 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 da. Um, so, anyways, and then people will create multiple versions of the formula, and ends up being a pretty messy and clunky spreadsheet. And this is actually what our food scientists and residents, when we're talking to prospective investors, like she pulls up her spreadsheet and shows like this is how it's done today, and like it's messy, it's clunky, it's prone to error. It can work, but like there's just, once again, like we were like, oh my gosh, like there has to be a better way. So this is what we're building out, and then we'll kind of show how Agilitas does it, to show just how quickly and easily we can do certain things. So, anyways, yeah. So that's really how it's done today, more or less.
Okay, the world still runs on Excel.
Yeah. So it looks, and then right there's and why, yes, we want to help people work more quickly, and it's one of the reasons. Just like I said, the Microsoft Excel and the way of working today, like yeah, sure it works, but it's not an enabling tool, right? Like what we're creating is an enabling tool that helps the food scientists, especially solve kind of like that cold start problem, where you no longer have like a blank canvas. Like we're going to get you a starting point really, really quickly. And then also, especially more at an organizational level, is there's so much great know-how that lives in the minds of food scientists and people in the food R&D community, that's kind of scattered. And then we hear a lot where it's like, okay, people leave, people retire, and it's like all of that know-how is now gone. It's left the organization. Well, with a system like Agilitas, right, we can retain that for the organization, right? It's going to learn from everything that's been done. And so that's another big opportunity as well, to not only have that system of record, but a system of engagement and intelligence. That's a big thing as well that we're trying to have as a selling point.
So can it be used for? I guess maybe I'm getting a little bit confused. I know that you can do it for like the initial steps, like you look at a label, like again, let's just say we'll say vegan protein bars. I don't know, just to make it easy. So you've reverse engineered the first protein bar just to see what a competitor is doing. But like, how does the process work while you're making the protein bars? And so how do you like avoid going back to that Excel spreadsheet? Like do the product developers continue to work through the platform, like adding notes? Like what's the process as you work through it?
Yeah, exactly. So one is like you can very in our platform you can very easily create multiple formula versions, either with the assistance of our AI or manually, whatever way you want to do it. Right. So say like you create five, and then yeah, you go, and then you can also create using our AI, the manufacturing, or the not even like at a manufacturing level, but the preparation instructions. Right. How am I going to create samples of this product? You can also do that very quickly, with the platform. You can then literally like print out the prep instructions. You can print out the different formula versions, take them to benchtop, create those samples, and then yes, you can go back to the platform. You can put in all of your experimental observations and results, and then we have a way where okay, now you can kind of easily compare all of those different formula versions and your results and decide okay, version 3 is the one I want to take next for further testing or scale up or whatever it may be. And that's where once you start doing that, you kind of get that feedback loop.
Okay.
And that's where especially the system is going to learn okay, what worked, what didn't work, and why. And that's going to really help improve the recommendations going forward.
Oh, so it also provides feedback on like the different trials. It's not just like the initial. It helps you like work through it as well. Like so you say like it'll help through it. So again, let's say this formulation of the protein, like the vegan protein bars, was too soft, and we want it to be harder. Like when you do the batch and you put the input, do you like say like this quality happened? Can you improve that for next time? Am I
Yeah,
in?
you can.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And right now it's all kind of in a qualitative, right? Like you think of for research chefs, like chef notes, like things like that. And then you can put that back into the system and then say okay, this is what happened. How would you suggest improving, for example.
Ooh.
What I would love, and this is within our roadmap, is then to be okay, well, can you provide quantitative results? Can you really do like a little more sophisticated design of experiments and things like that? um and then more around like sensory analysis and optimization, like those are things that we definitely plan to build into later on.
Yeah, that definitely sounds exciting. And I do have to ask this question because I am curious. Like with a lot of AI model, like we going
Yeah.
back to the chatbot models, like they are prone to hallucinations. Like
Yep.
I've experienced it where it gave me, there was a paper I was just using it as like initial search in it. I was looking for a paper and it was like the exact paper title. I was like, this is like awesome. And I click it and it was just a hallucination. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to know like, how do you address this with Agilitas, and like how do you make sure that it's not giving you like add 5 cups of sugar when
Yeah.
your product should only be a pound.
Yeah. So yeah, and I know the famous hallucination example in food was, I think this was like a year or so ago now, when I don't know, someone asked ChatGPT for like a recipe for pizza, I think it was, and it recommended glue as an
Yeah.
ingredient because one person had put that jokingly in a Reddit post.
Yeah, I've seen that
Whatever.
one.
So anyway, so there's two ways that we're mitigating hallucinations and just helping improve the accuracy. So one is, so our foundational layer is, existing large language models like a chat GPT. We're using multiple, we're plugging them in to different parts of the platform, where it makes the most sense. But then we're augmenting those with our own, data sets and information around ingredients, products in the market, food science, things like that, the underlying LLMs, large language models, aren't trained on, right? So we're adding our own information and data on top of that. Um, and especially that's important because, LLMs have been trained on a lot of like consumer facing, food data, for lack of a better phrase, like a lot of recipes, right? But that are for cooking at your home, not creating
Right.
a commercialized product. So that's where we've added our own information and things of that nature to help make it more relevant for food manufacturers and brand. The other thing which is fascinating is we're taking an agentic AI approach. I mentioned that at the very beginning. We're an agentic AI platform for food and beverage formulation, and the first, I may add, for food and beverage formulation. And so, and this is really all kind of, yeah, agentic AI, kind of the latest wave of AI that it's really started to become a buzzword here in the last 6 months. But anyways, that's where we're really kind of behind the scenes. We're having an AI agent or agents that are working autonomously to complete the goal that's been set forth by the user, and you have a lot more of like chain of thought reasoning. So for example, I was talking about like our research report generator, 40-page report that's going to give you, look at a certain product category and analyze products in that category. Da, 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 da. So when a user creates a report, they'll say, okay, I want to understand, yeah, high protein, low sugar, vegan snack bars or whatever. That's basically all that they need to put. Super simple. But then in the background, we have this orchestration of AI agents that's then going out, finding the relevant information for like different parts of that report, bringing it together, synthesizing it, kind of sanity checking. They're each kind of challenging each other in the background. Like, is this accurate? Does this make sense for a food scientist? Things like that. And then bringing it all together. And so that actually takes like 5-10 minutes of work in the
That's
background by
pretty
the
short.
AI agent. In the grand scheme of things, relatively short, but all to show, right? It's not like a single prompt response. Like it's not
Right.
it's not that, right? So that's all going on in the background for a couple minutes to then create that very comprehensive report. And so yeah, we spent quite a bit of engineering and development time to really to work on that.
And do you incorporate like so I do food science, so like there's new things that I'm learning about how to use fat crystallization. Are you like how do you incorporate maybe like newer ingredients that are maybe being sold or like new ways of like new emulsifiers, new like how does that get incorporated? Because food's evolving, world's changing as you
Yeah,
mentioned earlier.
yeah. I mean, we're adding new, so we have an existing ingredient database, about 15,000 ingredients, and we're adding more to that over time. And then our customers, like, they can create their own ingredient library, as they get, spec sheet
Okay.
from suppliers, ingredient suppliers, and things like that. They can create an ingredient library that's custom to them. So that, yeah, because I know that they're getting inundated by their suppliers about new ingredients and things like that. So, and then as we, suggest and recommend formulas, like it'll pull from their ingredient library, our ingredient library on wherever it makes the most sense. And there's a lot of, I think, especially for our ingredient library, we've done a very good job in um, kind of creating, how do I say this? Creating insights around like the functionality and applications of every ingredient in our library that you're not going to find otherwise. So we have a lot of information about, let's say just beyond the nutritional value of ingredients. Like we have a lot that's kind of formulation specific information.
Okay. And then just thinking about students because they're going to be going into product development if they're going to
Yeah.
that role.
Yeah.
And like this does seem it seems like the future. It does seem like more people are going to get into this and they're not going to have Agilitas on their computer at school. Like they're going to probably come into the workplace. But
Yeah.
do you have any like advice for how someone can start working with AI tools like
Mhm.
yours because I guess I think the important thing that we're always saying is it tries to empower someone. Like it's not there to replace, but it's
Yeah.
supposed to almost like supercharge you. But, there's still a bit of a skill being able to work with AI. Like that's something that I've learned with, like, again, using the chat. I want to talk about your customers first and then we'll
Yeah.
go into the students.
Okay. Okay.
How do you advise your customers to use Agilitas? Like to
Yeah.
use it well without losing the thinking on their end, so to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one, as it's just a matter of like principle, like we really tried to make the platform flexible where like it's a marriage between the artificial intelligence and then the know-how of the food scientists. Because look, food scientists are smart people, right? We're just trying to give them a tool that's going to enable them to, yeah, work more quickly, work more effectively, and then also just like have a virtual sandbox where they can go in and play around and kind of do what if analysis. What if we wanted to change this ingredient for that ingredient? What if we wanted to make this claim or that, or that claim, whatever it is. And that's just hard to do in kind of the Microsoft Excel world that they've lived in for a very long time. Um, and then yeah, we've really, yeah, also tried to make it very easy to adopt, very intuitive. um so it's I'll always do an onboarding session with people just to get them up to speed, but then usually after that they're kind of off to the races. They've got to figure it out how to use the platform. um So yeah, hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah. So then we'll shift gears a little bit to students and thinking about like how did they get
Yeah,
used to working with like how would you advise someone like moving into this like new I don't want to say new world but like this like changed world so to say like
yeah,
what advice would you give to someone to start practicing working with AI tools and
yeah,
just being a critical thinker while you're doing it?
yeah, exactly. Well, look, I'll give a hot take,
Okay.
which is I don't think people, I don't think most roles, and especially I don't think food scientists will get replaced by AI. But you know who you can get replaced by is a food scientist that knows how to use AI, right? And like that's the same I think for a lot of jobs that are out there. So I think it's an imperative for especially for young food scientists to learn how to effectively and responsibly use AI. Because yeah, I think that's just right. It's about supercharging what you can do. A lot of free tools or low cost AI tools, like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, you name it, that um, I think just go around experiment, whether it's for personal or academic or professional use within, what's allowed, I guess. I don't know what the guidelines are right now for universities, but anyways, um, yeah, and just go in and experiment. And then, I mean, I think the one thing too is like, yeah, AI it's democratized learning. It's reduced the barriers to entrepreneurship. I mean, there's so many like no code web app builders now that I've, started to tinker around a little bit. Like it's unbelievable what you can do. So, um, that, yeah, I just go out and experiment and learn and, things are changing. Like, I kind of my head's always spinning with okay, like OpenAI has released this new feature, Elon Musk's XAI has launched this, or there was DeepSeek from China a couple weeks ago, like all this stuff. So I
Yeah.
guess with that, I would always also encourage people to kind of try to stay in the know about how things are evolving, because it really is changing at a breakneck pace, and just trying to stay on top of things and yeah, just experiment and learn.
So really play around and just don't let your head explode like basically
Yeah,
like have fun with it, enjoy, like practice, try like seeing pushing the limit to what you can and can't do with it, but always like fact checking it as well. But also just like
yes,
don't let yourself get overwhelmed because like yeah, like you said with the whole like there's a new model coming out each week and I'm like I don't have time to figure out
yeah.
like all of this type of stuff.
And so going back a little bit to your previous question as well is like, I like to think AI a bit of it's like a compass. Like it's there to help kind of point you in the right direction. But then yeah, you need to apply your own know-how. You need to do your additional research. You need to, verify and substantiate information to then really kind of get to that last. I think it gets you to that first 80% really quickly. But then there's that last 20% you're always going to have to then come in and do the rest of the legwork to accomplish whatever goal you're looking to accomplish.
And then taking it to the future a little bit more, I know you touched upon like where you see Agilitas going in the future, but like where do you see AI applications in food R&D? Like where would you? I guess let's take it back. Where would you like to see it go? And then how do you see Agilitas evolving alongside that?
Yeah. I mean, kind of one and the same for me. The holy grail that I would love for Agilitas to accomplish is kind of we hit on the trifecta of helping companies really quickly and effectively create products that taste great, but then are also super nutritious and sustainable. And so there's so much data that we haven't even we're just scratching the surface in terms of what we can do to help companies get to that. And so I think every food company has the ambition to kind of check the box on all of those three things. And I believe data and AI will be a key component in helping companies get there. So that's really where I would love to see us and the industry as a whole in 5 years um is yeah, being able to hit the check the box on all three of those things.
Okay, and then my last question that I like to always ask my guests is do you have any advice for students, or do you have any parting words that you've learned from your journey that you'd want other students to hear?
Embrace the zigs and the zags, as I have tried to do and will continue to do. I mean, yeah, the world is different, so different now than it was when I left 10 years ago in undergraduate. So there's, but I think going back to AI, right? It's democratized learning, it's democratized entrepreneurship, it's or at least reduce the barriers to entry for those things. So, like, yeah, I would just say don't be afraid to experiment, take some risks. Responsibly, of course, within kind of your appetite and means. But yeah, I think the days of being like, okay, right, like you are a chemical engineer or you are a food scientist or you are right, like
Yeah.
we're like the days of being defined by our degree, like that's over. So I think it's really important to yeah make yourself skilled in kind of multiple facets that maybe you would not have otherwise thought of. So yeah, I guess that's those are my parting words.
Well, I think that is great advice, Tommy, and I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing about what you do, Agilitas, some of your insights in the future of where you think R&D and AI is going, and thanks for sharing with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Appreciate it.